My brother has always known how to make an entrance. I'm the one who holds the door open. That's how it's always been. Marcus walks in, and the whole room rearranges itself around him. People stand up straighter. My mom smooths her hair. My aunts start offering food before he even gets his coat off. And I'm just there. The one who showed up an hour early to help set up. The one who remembered to pick up the gluten-free rolls because Aunt Diane can't have wheat anymore. The one who knows where the extra folding chairs are kept in the garage because I'd been the one bringing them out for every single family event for the past 6 years. I used to think it didn't bother me. I told myself I wasn't doing it for the recognition. I was doing it because my mom needed help and I lived 20 minutes away and Marcus lived in Seattle, and that was just the reality of the situation. Geography, not favoritism. That's what I told myself for a long time. I stopped telling myself that around 18 months ago when my mom had her hip replaced. I took 3 days off work. I drove her to the pre-op appointment, sat in the waiting room for 4 hours during the surgery, drove her home, set up the downstairs bedroom so she wouldn't have to do the stairs, filled every prescription, figured out the physical therapy schedule, coordinated with her insurance, and spent the first 2 weeks going over every other day to make sure she was eating and doing her exercises and not just sitting in the recliner, watching game shows and skipping the medication schedule because she hated how the painkillers made her feel foggy. Marcus sent flowers. They arrived 3 days after the surgery. The card said, "Get well soon, love Marcus and Jess." My mom put it on the mantle next to her wedding photo. She called him the week she was clear to walk without the cane. He was on speaker while I was washing her dishes. I heard her say, "Marcus, I don't know what I would have done without you during all of this." I set the dish down very carefully. I didn't say anything. What would I have said? She wasn't being cruel. She genuinely believed it. In her version of events, Marcus had been present in some meaningful way. The flowers, the phone calls, the fact that he cared. And I had been present in the way that furniture is present. Useful. Reliable. Not something you think to thank. That was the moment I understood the shape of things. Not the first moment, really. I'd felt it for years in smaller ways. But that was the moment I stopped being able to pretend it wasn't there. Marcus came home for Thanksgiving the following year. He was only staying 4 days, and my mom had been talking about it since October. She'd already bought the good coffee he likes, the specific brand of sparkling water, the fancy cheese from the deli counter. I found all of it when I came over the week before to help her deep clean the kitchen. She had a little list on the counter, things to get for Marcus's visit. I scanned it quickly, looking for my name. It wasn't there. But I was also coming for Thanksgiving. I've come every year. I didn't need a list, I suppose, because I was just part of the furniture. He arrived the Wednesday night before. I came Thursday morning to help cook. When I walked in, Marcus was already at the kitchen table with a cup of that good coffee, telling my mom some story about a client dinner in Portland. She was standing at the stove laughing, completely at ease, the most relaxed I'd seen her in months. When she saw me, she smiled and said, "Oh good, you can start on the potatoes." Not hi, not thanks for coming, just potatoes. I started on the potatoes. The 4 days were fine. They were fine in the way that a sweater that's slightly too small is fine. You can wear it, you can go about your day, but there's a persistent tightness across the shoulders that you're always aware of. Marcus was charming and funny, and my mom beamed at him constantly. I washed dishes and refilled serving bowls and found the extra napkins and made sure Aunt Diane didn't accidentally get the regular rolls. He left Sunday morning. My mom cried a little when he hugged her goodbye. She walked him to his rental car and stood in the driveway waving until he turned out of the neighborhood. I was inside loading the dishwasher. I want to be fair about this. I don't think my mom is a bad person. I think she fell into a pattern so long ago that she can't see it anymore. Marcus is the golden one. Has been since we were kids, for reasons I've never fully decoded. Maybe it's because he moved away and every visit feels like an event. Maybe it's because he's more like her than I am. Maybe it's just random, the way favoritism sometimes is. A chemical thing, an accident of personality. I spent years trying to understand it, and eventually I stopped because the understanding didn't change anything. What I know is this: I was the one who stayed. I was the one who showed up. And somewhere along the way, my mom had started to see that not as devotion, but as inevitability. The estate planning stuff started about 8 months ago. My mom turned 68 in the spring. She's healthy mostly, but the hip replacement had shaken something loose in her, a new awareness of time, of logistics, of the fact that she had a house and savings and a collection of jewelry from my grandmother, and nobody had ever sat down and decided what happened to any of it. Her financial advisor had been gently nudging her to get things organized. She finally called an estate attorney in February. She didn't tell me she was doing this. I found out because I drove over to drop off a birthday gift for a neighbor friend of hers and walked in while my mom was on the phone. I heard financial power of attorney and primary executor before she noticed me and said she'd call back. She told me it was just paperwork. Getting things in order. Nothing dramatic. I asked if she needed help with anything, researching attorneys, gathering documents, whatever. She said Marcus was handling it. I remember standing there in her kitchen with the gift bag still in my hand. Marcus is handling it, I said. He offered, she said, a little defensively. He's very organized about this kind of thing. Marcus lives 2 time zones away and visits 4 times a year. I live 20 minutes from her house and come over twice a month. But Marcus is organized, so Marcus was handling the estate planning. Okay, I said. I drove home and I sat in my car in my own driveway for a few minutes before going inside. Not because I was devastated, or not only because of that, but because I was trying to figure out what I actually felt. It took me a while to name it. It wasn't jealousy exactly. It was something closer to exhaustion, the specific tiredness of caring about something for a very long time and realizing the caring hadn't registered at all. I didn't bring it up again. My mom didn't volunteer any information. Months went by. I kept coming over. I drove her to a dental appointment in April, helped her file an insurance claim in May, when a branch came down on the fence, spent most of a Saturday in June going through the garage and donating 3 carloads of stuff she'd been meaning to clear out for years. Marcus visited in July. My mom made that specific coffee again. At some point in late August, her financial advisor, a woman named Linda, who I'd met twice at family things, called me. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. "I'm sorry to reach out like this," Linda said. She sounded careful, the way people sound when they're trying to say something difficult without saying it directly. "I want to make sure you have some context about a few things. Regarding your mother's accounts," she explained it slowly. There had been some transactions she wanted to flag, some changes to account access that had been made over the past few months. She wasn't in a position to give me full details, privacy rules, she said, but she felt it was important that I was aware. That someone close to your mother should be aware, she said. She asked if I'd had a chance to speak with an attorney about my own role in your mother's plans. I hadn't, because I didn't have a role. Marcus was handling it. After I hung up, I sat down at my kitchen table and stayed there for a while. I didn't panic. I want to be clear about that. I didn't immediately spiral into worst-case thinking. What I felt was something more deliberate than panic, a slow, cold settling. Like a room coming into focus. I called a family law attorney the next morning, just to understand my options, just to know what questions to ask. My mom's birthday is in September. She turned 69. We do a dinner, always. Our family's smaller since my dad passed, so it's usually just me and Marcus if he can make it, and a few of her close friends. This year Marcus was flying in. He booked the trip weeks in advance, which was notable. Usually he confirms about 10 days out. I drove over the afternoon before to help set up and drop off the cake I'd ordered from her favorite bakery. The same one we've been going to since I was in middle school. The woman at the counter knows my mom's name. I've been ordering from them for years. Every birthday, every Christmas, every time my mom had a rough week and needed something to look forward to. When I got to the house, Marcus's rental car was already in the driveway. He'd flown in a day early. My mom hadn't mentioned that. Inside, the two of them were at the dining room table with papers spread out between them. I caught a glimpse before Marcus flipped a folder closed, something that looked like a document with signature lines. "Hey, you," Marcus said. He stood up and hugged me. He's good at that. The warm entrance, the immediate ease, the way he makes you feel like you're the one he was hoping to see. I've always known it's at least partly performance, and I've also always been susceptible to it anyway. "You look great." "Thanks," I said. I set the cake box on the counter. "Getting things organized?" Just some paperwork, my mom said. Same phrase as February. Nothing to worry about. I smiled and went to put the extra chair out on the porch. The dinner was the next evening. It was a Saturday, warm for September, and we ate outside. My mom's two closest friends were there, Carol and Bev, women she'd known since before I was born. There was wine and good food and the cake that my mom loved, and Marcus sitting at the head of the table making everyone laugh. I sat across from him and refilled water glasses and made sure Bev had the right fork and listened to him tell a story about a rafting trip he'd taken that summer. He got to the funny part of the story, and everyone laughed, and in the pause after, he lifted his wine glass and said he wanted to make a toast. To Mom. To 69 years of being the most incredible woman any of us had ever known. She looked at him like he'd hung the moon. Then he said, "And I just want to say, I'm so glad we were able to get everything squared away this week. Mom, you're in good hands. Your future is secure." He said it warmly, proudly, the way you'd announce something good. Everyone smiled and raised their glasses. Carol said, "Oh, that's wonderful." My mom was beaming, and I felt the floor shift slightly under my chair. I knew what he meant. I knew what squared away this week meant, what had been on those papers at the dining room table. And I knew that the way he'd said it, "I'm so glad we were able to," was doing a lot of work. We. As if it had been a collaboration. As if my mom had been an equal partner in something she'd been guided through. I looked at my mom. She was still smiling. And I thought about Linda's phone call, about the careful way she'd said someone close to your mother should be aware, about the attorney I'd spoken to the next morning who had used the phrase undue influence in a way that wasn't hypothetical. I set my wine glass down. "Mom," I said. My voice came out calm. I was surprised how calm. "Did you get a chance to talk to Linda before signing anything?" The smile flickered. "What do you mean?" "Linda called me a few weeks ago," I said. "She had some questions about the account changes. I wasn't sure if she'd been able to reach you." The table had gone quiet. Carol and Bev had that particular stillness of people who can feel a room change and are waiting to understand how. Marcus leaned back slightly. "Linda's great," he said, easy, redirecting. "She's very thorough. I'm sure whatever she had questions about, we addressed it. She mentioned some transactions," I said, still calm. She seemed concerned. "She worries," Marcus said. "Still easy, still warm. That's her job. Everything is completely in order." I looked at him. I had spent 32 years watching him be charming, and I knew exactly what the charm was covering right now. "Mom," I said, and I turned back to her. "Did you read everything before you signed it?" My mom's expression had shifted into something I recognized, the look she gets when she's uncomfortable and trying to decide whether to smooth things over or let them surface. She's always chosen smooth things over. Her whole life, when things get difficult, she finds the easiest path back to normal. "Of course I did," she said, but her voice was smaller than usual. "Because Linda specifically asked," I said gently, "whether you were aware of who had been added to the account in March. As a joint holder, she said she'd asked you and you weren't sure." Silence. Bev put her fork down very quietly. Marcus straightened. The warmth was still on his face, but something behind it had recalibrated. "That's a family matter," he said. "I don't think this is really the time." "I actually think it is," I said, "since you brought it up at the table." My mom looked at me. Then she looked at Marcus. Then she looked down at her birthday cake. "I didn't know about a joint holder," she said. Quietly, "I thought it was just the power of attorney." Marcus started to say something. I said, "Mom, do you want me to call Linda on Monday and ask her to walk you through the full picture? Just you and her, no one else on the call?" She looked up at me. There was something in her face I hadn't seen before, or hadn't seen in a long time. Something cracked open and searching. "Yes," she said. "I think I do." The dinner ended shortly after that, not dramatically. Carol and Bev helped clear the plates and said warm, normal goodbyes, the kind where everyone pretends the last 20 minutes were less uncomfortable than they were. Marcus helped carry dishes inside without being asked, which was the first time in memory. He left the next morning without the extra day he planned to stay. I called Linda first thing Monday. She stayed on the phone with my mom for 45 minutes. I sat in my mom's living room and waited, and when my mom came out of the bedroom, she sat down across from me and was quiet for a moment and then said, "There were things I didn't realize I'd agreed to." I didn't say I know. I didn't say I told you. I didn't say any of the things that would have felt satisfying to say. I said, "Okay, we'll fix it." It took about 6 weeks, working with Linda and the estate attorney and my mom's regular lawyer. Some of it required Marcus's cooperation, and he gave it, not cheerfully, but without the fight I'd expected. I think he understood that the alternative was worse. The joint account access was removed. The power of attorney was revised with an independent advocate involved. Everything my mom signed, she signed with full information and nobody else in the room. My mom and I have talked about it a few times since, not the kind of big, processed conversations where everything gets said. She's not built for that, and honestly, neither am I. But smaller moments. She asked me once, a few months after, why I hadn't said something sooner. I told her the truth. I said that for a long time I'd assumed my presence spoke for itself. That showing up consistently, year after year, was its own statement of love and investment and intention. And I'd been wrong. Presence only speaks if someone's listening for it. She didn't say anything for a second. Then she said, "I heard you the whole time. I just didn't know how to say it." I think that's probably true, and I think it's also true that it wasn't enough. The hearing without the saying. But some things can't be argued into being different. They can only slowly, painfully become different. We have dinner once a week now, just the two of us. She calls me when she has a question about anything. Bills, appointments, paperwork, anything. When Marcus visited at Christmas, she introduced me to one of her friends who was meeting the family for the first time. She said, "This is my daughter. She's the one who takes care of everything." It was the smallest sentence. It was also the first time she'd said it out loud. I'm not going to pretend everything is perfectly resolved. Families don't resolve, not really. They shift and adjust, and some wounds stay tender longer than you'd like. Marcus and I are civil. My mom and I are closer than we've been in years. Maybe ever, and I've stopped waiting for presence to speak for itself. If you've ever been the one who stayed, the one who showed up, the one who made sure the right roles were on the table and nobody noticed, I'm not going to tell you it's enough. I'm going to tell you that you deserve to be seen, and that sometimes you have to be the one who decides that. Tell me, have you ever been in a situation where you were doing everything and getting credit for nothing? I want to hear from you in the comments. And if this story resonated, you know what to do. There are more where this came from. I thought a lot about what actually happened, not the paperwork, not the account changes, not the 6 weeks of phone calls and attorney meetings. The underneath of it. The reason it got as far as it did. Here's what I keep coming back to. Marcus didn't succeed because he was smarter than me. He succeeded because I had spent years making myself easy to overlook. I showed up so quietly, so consistently, so without any need for acknowledgement that I had effectively taught everyone around me that my presence required no attention. I was just there, like gravity. You don't thank gravity. You don't think about it at all until something falls. That's not someone else's fault. That's something I did. And understanding that was harder than anything else in this whole situation. Harder than the confrontation at the dinner table. Harder than watching my mom's face go pale when she realized she didn't know what she'd signed, because it required me to look at years of my own choices and see how they had contributed to the outcome. I'm not saying I caused what Marcus did. I want to be clear about that. What he did was wrong, and the responsibility for it sits entirely with him. But the invisibility, the way I had allowed myself to become furniture in my own family, that was mine to own. I had confused showing up with being seen. They are not the same thing. What I understand now, on the other side of all of it, is that integrity only works if it's visible. Not performed, visible. There's a difference. Performing integrity means doing the right thing so people will notice. Being visibly integral means being honest about what you're doing and why. Being present in conversations, not just in logistics, asking for what you need instead of waiting to be offered it. I had confused silence with dignity for a long time. It isn't. Silence is just silence. The other thing I think about is my mom, about how a person can be a good person, a genuinely loving, well-meaning person, and still cause real harm through patterns they can't see. She wasn't malicious. She loved Marcus in a way that had a particular shape to it, a shape she developed over decades without ever examining it. And because she'd never examined it, she couldn't see how it made her vulnerable. Not just to him, to the version of herself that would smile and nod and sign something she didn't fully understand, because the person she trusted most was sitting across the table smiling warmly. That's where I think about resilience. Not as toughness, not as refusing to feel things, but as the decision to keep asking the question, even when the answer is uncomfortable. My mom asked the question, finally. It cost her something. She had to sit with the fact that she hadn't seen what was right in front of her, and that her not seeing had consequences. That takes a particular kind of strength. The kind that doesn't look like strength from the outside. It looks like a 68-year-old woman sitting quietly in her bedroom on a phone call, listening carefully, and then coming out and saying, "There were things I didn't realize I'd agreed to." That sentence was the bravest thing I watched anyone do that whole year. I'm still the one who shows up. I still drive over twice a month, still handle the insurance stuff, still know where the extra folding chairs are kept. But I'm not invisible anymore, and neither is she.